The silent century. For 100 long years, far away from human eyes in the dark corners of space, an alien race prepared. They did not rest, they did not doubt, they did not stop. Every hour was training, every day was practice, every year was sacrifice. For them, Earth was not just a planet. Earth was a prize, a challenge, and a dream of conquest. They believed that humans were weak, soft, and untested. They believed that taking Earth would be quick, easy, and glorious. The aliens came from a world of iron skies and endless storms. On their homeworld, only the strongest survived. They called themselves the Cathar. Their leader spoke of destiny. They said the universe had chosen Earth as their final battlefield. The Cathar believed that if they could crush humanity, they would rule the stars forever. So they trained. Every child born among the Cathar was taken to the war camps. Every soldier was drilled until their bodies broke, and then they were forced to rise again. Their minds were shaped into weapons, stripped of fear, sharpened with rage. They fought against machines, against beasts, and against each other. They learned to breathe poison air, to march through fire, to fight with claws, with blades, with plasma rifles that could burn through mountains. 100 years. Generations lived and died inside the training grounds. Old warriors passed their scars to the young. Songs of blood and victory filled the camps. Every starship was built for war. Every city turned into a forge. Their skies thundered with fleets, endless black ships rising like flocks of metal birds. Their leaders reminded them of the goal: Earth. To the Cathar, humans were nothing but prey. Creatures of comfort, weak bodies, short lives, and soft hearts. They cannot stand against us, the general said. They do not know war as we do. When the day comes, they will fall within minutes. And so the aliens prepared, never questioning, never doubting. But there was a secret the Cathar did not understand. For while they trained in silence, humanity lived in fire. Humans had written their history in war, in loss, in survival against impossible odds. Humans had fought each other for thousands of years, in deserts, in jungles, in cities drowned by rain and smoke. While the Cathar sharpened their blades in secret, humans sharpened their souls in reality. But the aliens did not see this truth. Instead, they counted the days. On the 99th year, the Cathar completed the final drill. It was said no species in the galaxy had ever trained harder. Their soldiers moved as one, their fleets cut through space with perfect order. Their leaders smiled. Victory was certain. On the 100th year, the skies above their world opened. The armadas were ready. 10,000 warships, each carrying legions. Their weapons glowed like stars. Their generals raised their claws and swore an oath. Earth will fall in 6 minutes. The Cathar celebrated. They feasted. They sang. They promised their children that soon they would walk on a new world, a green and blue jewel that would belong to them. They promised that humans would kneel, that human cities would burn, that the galaxy would remember the Cathar forever. But somewhere, hidden deep in the silence of the cosmos, the universe itself seemed to wait, because Earth was not what they thought. The Cathar believed they had trained for every challenge. They believed 100 years of sweat and sacrifice had made them unstoppable. But no training could prepare them for humanity. No drills could copy the madness of a human heart under fire. No simulations could copy the will of a human refusing to kneel. The century was over. The fleets rose, black shadows crossing the stars. The invasion would begin. The Cathar believed they were ready, and yet destiny was waiting to laugh in their faces, for after 100 years of endless preparation, after generations of brutal training, after a century of silence and sacrifice, they would discover the truth. Their war would not last a century. It would not last a year. It would not last an hour. It would last only 6 minutes. The arrival, the stars trembled when the Cathar armada moved. 10,000 warships, black and sharp, cut across the void like a storm of blades. They had waited a century for this moment, and now the invasion had begun. From Earth, at first, it was only whispers. Astronomers in lonely observatories saw strange shadows moving against the night sky. At first, they thought it was a trick, maybe comets, maybe asteroids. But then the signals came. Radio bursts, strange energy patterns, movements too perfect to be natural. Governments were alerted. Military radars turned upward. Satellites went silent one by one. Then came the sight. In the skies above Earth, the darkness grew thicker. Cities stared upward and saw the impossible. Giant black ships covering the heavens. From New York to Tokyo, from deserts to islands, every eye looked up. The sun itself seemed dimmed. The alien fleet had arrived. The Cathar watched with pride. They had trained for this moment. Their soldiers beat their armored chests, chanting victory before the first shot was fired. Their generals smiled, confident, certain that humanity would collapse in fear. And indeed, fear spread. On Earth, people screamed. Cars crashed, planes froze in the sky. Whole cities shook in terror. The internet burned with panic. Endless messages, endless videos of the ships above. The end has come. The sky is falling. We are finished. But something strange also began to happen. In the middle of fear, there was silence. No alien weapon struck. No bombs fell. The armada hung above Earth like a shadow that refused to move. The Cathar were waiting. They wanted to see humanity's spirit break before the first blow. They wanted Earth to know that resistance was useless. For 1 century, they had imagined this moment, the moment when humans would look up and despair. Yet on Earth, despair did not last long. Military bases scrambled jets. Tanks rolled into cities. Soldiers grabbed their rifles and prepared. Ordinary citizens boarded buses, rushed underground, or in some places, even armed themselves. Fear was there, yes, but it mixed with something else. Anger, defiance, the ancient human instinct to fight when cornered. The Cathar did not see this. From their flagships, they saw only prey below. Then came the first strike. Columns of light dropped from the alien ships, piercing the clouds, tearing through steel and stone. Explosions shook the ground. Whole streets turned into fire. Alien soldiers marched down from their transports, tall, armored, eyes glowing like burning coals. They carried weapons that spat plasma and fire. Cities screamed, and for a moment it looked as if humanity was truly broken. But Earth did not fall. Instead, resistance began. In one city, a group of soldiers fired old rockets at a massive alien walker, and to everyone's surprise, it collapsed. In another, hackers broke into alien signals, jamming their comms. In small villages, farmers and workers grabbed whatever they could and fought back against soldiers 10 times their strength. The Cathar noticed. At first they laughed. To them, these humans were insects, weak and foolish. But insects bite. Insects swarm. Insects refuse to die. The battle spread across continents. Fire in the skies, fire in the seas, fire in the streets. The Cathar pushed forward, but every step they took was bought with blood. Not only human blood, but their own. On the second minute of invasion, one alien fleet lost contact with their ground forces. On the third minute, another flagship reported heavy damage from weapons humans should not have possessed. On the fourth minute, commanders began shouting at each other, wondering why the easy conquest was taking longer than expected. By the fifth minute, Cathar soldiers felt something they had never felt in 100 years of training: doubt. On the sixth minute, they began to understand the truth. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was something else, something older, something darker, something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. In space, the Cathar generals stared down at Earth with burning rage. They had promised their people 6 minutes of glory. Instead, 6 minutes had turned into a nightmare. Still, the battle raged on. Smoke covered the cities. The oceans boiled with falling wrecks. Humans bled, but they did not kneel. And as the Cathar watched the chaos unfold, they whispered to themselves in disbelief. This was not supposed to happen. But it had. And Earth was only just beginning to fight. The first strike, the invasion, had begun. Alien warships floated above the world like black suns, their shadows crawling over oceans and mountains. From their bellies, machines of war fell. Massive transports, armored walkers, soldiers in dark steel armor. The Cathar had trained for this moment for 100 years, and now their claws were reaching for Earth. The first strike was swift, brutal and loud. Columns of plasma fire rained from the sky, cutting through skyscrapers, turning highways into rivers of molten stone. Entire neighborhoods vanished in a single blast. Alien troops marched through burning streets, their voices echoing in harsh chants. For a moment, humanity seemed powerless. Civilians ran in terror. Cities drowned in smoke. The Cathar generals smiled aboard their ships. 6 minutes, they whispered to themselves. 6 minutes and Earth will fall. But the Cathar had made their first mistake. They believed humans would break. Instead, humans burned with fury. In the ruins of New York, a squad of soldiers refused to retreat. They set up old anti-air missiles, weapons designed for human wars, not alien ones. The Cathar laughed at such primitive tools, but when the rockets launched, they tore through the sky and smashed into an alien carrier. The massive machine exploded in a flash of fire, crashing into the Hudson River. The humans cheered. The Cathar commanders fell silent. In Europe, tanks rolled onto city streets. Their shells, crude compared to alien energy weapons, still shattered alien walkers. In Africa, militias armed with little more than courage and machine guns dragged alien soldiers into ambushes. In Asia, hackers broke into alien signals, spreading confusion across the fleet. In South America, whole towns fought together, throwing Molotovs and homemade bombs into armored columns. The Cathar could not understand. This was not supposed to happen. Their training had promised victory, swift and clean. Yet every corner of Earth bit back. Every city became a battlefield. Every human became a soldier. By the second minute of battle, alien lines slowed. By the third, the invaders realized they were not fighting prey. They were fighting predators. Humans were not perfect. They bled, they screamed, they fell in great numbers, but they did not stop. When one defender fell, another picked up the rifle. When one wall collapsed, another line formed behind it. Humanity's strength was not in weapons, not in armor, not even in numbers. Humanity's strength was in will, and that will was unbreakable. The Cathar soldier known as Serikal had fought in 100 drills. He had trained since he could walk, raised in fire and pain. Yet when he looked into the eyes of a human soldier, a man with blood running down his face, still fighting with nothing but a knife, Serikal felt something new. Fear. He struck the man down, but the human's last act was to laugh. Laugh as if he had already won. The sound haunted Serikal even as more humans charged at him from the smoke. The Cathar generals barked orders. They demanded their troops push forward, crush resistance, claim the planet. But their armies slowed. Communication lines flickered with static. Reports came in of lost battalions, destroyed ships, unexpected traps. It made no sense. They had trained for a century. How could it fall apart in minutes? On the fourth minute, the Cathar began to lose their rhythm. Their perfect formations broke under sudden ambushes. Their machines stumbled into traps set by desperate humans. Explosions lit the night as alien cruisers fell from the sky. On the fifth minute, panic spread among their soldiers. These humans were not weak. They were not soft. They were chaos given flesh. They fought with rage, with cunning, with madness the Cathar could not predict. The humans did not follow rules of war. They invented new ones as they fought. By the sixth minute, the Cathar realized the truth. 100 years of training had not prepared them for this. They had prepared for a war of strength. But this was a war of survival, and survival was humanity's oldest skill. From orbit, Cathar commanders stared at Earth in disbelief. Their armies were not winning, they were drowning. Every street they took cost them more than they could afford. Every human they killed gave rise to two more willing to fight. The humans were not breaking. The humans were rising. The first strike was supposed to end the war. Instead, it had only begun the nightmare. And for the first time in a century, the Cathar understood that 6 minutes was not a promise of victory. It was a curse, a countdown to their own destruction. Humanity's hidden edge. The Cathar had come with pride, with fleets that covered the sky, with soldiers trained for 100 years. They thought they had seen every kind of war. They believed no species could resist them, but in 6 short minutes their perfect order began to break. The reason was simple. They had misjudged humanity. For the Cathar, war was training, drills, endless practice in the safety of their own world. Every battle they fought was simulated. Every scar was given in controlled tests. They believed this made them strong. But humanity's strength was not learned in drills. It was carved into their very bones. Humans had survived ice ages, plagues, floods, and endless disasters. They had fought each other with sticks, then swords, then guns, then machines. Every century of human history was painted with blood. For the Cathar, war was preparation. For humans, war was memory. This was the hidden edge. On the ground, the Cathar pushed forward with towering walkers and blazing weapons. Their machines spat fire, tearing holes through buildings. Yet humans refused to scatter. Soldiers, workers, even children grabbed what they could and fought back. A farmer with a hunting rifle dropped an alien officer. A group of firefighters used their truck to ram into a transport, setting it ablaze. A pilot, out of missiles, flew his jet straight into a warship, sacrificing himself to bring it down. The Cathar were stunned. Their minds could not understand such madness. Why would anyone throw their life away? Why would anyone laugh as death closed in? But to humans, sacrifice was not madness. It was survival. Every Cathar soldier had been trained to obey orders without question. But humans had no such limits. When plans failed, they improvised. When weapons broke, they made new ones. When surrounded, they turned the trap against their enemy. To fight humans was to fight chaos itself. One Cathar commander, Warlords, watched in disbelief as his elite troops were defeated by a group of civilians. The aliens had superior armor, plasma rifles, perfect formation. The humans had only Molotovs, steel pipes, and fury. Yet somehow the humans won. Warlords had no answer. His training had prepared him for armies, not for ordinary people who refused to die. In the 5th minute of invasion, Cathar leaders sent desperate commands. They ordered their soldiers to crush resistance quickly. But the harder they pushed, the stronger humans fought back. Every street became a trap. Every building became a fortress. The Cathar were no longer hunters, they were prey walking into cages. The hidden edge of humanity was not strength of body. It was strength of spirit. In the chaos of battle, a human general spoke to his troops. His words were carried across radios, televisions, and phones. They think we are weak. They think we will break. But they have never known humanity. We are the children of war. We are the survivors of every end. And today we will show them who we are. The message spread like fire. People across the world listened, and something ancient awoke inside them. Fear remained, but it was not enough to kill their will. Humans fought harder, louder, wilder. The Cathar began to realize their nightmare. These humans were not fighting for victory. They were fighting for existence. And a species that fights for existence will never surrender. In the 6th minute, Cathar fleets above Earth reported massive losses. Their ships were hit by human missiles, hacked by human codes, rammed by human pilots willing to die just to take one enemy with them. No amount of training could prepare for this kind of war. The Cathar had thought Earth was soft. Instead, they found a planet that had spent thousands of years sharpening itself through endless struggle. The humans were unpredictable, unyielding, unstoppable, and the aliens finally understood the terrible truth. Their century of training had not prepared them for 6 minutes against humanity. The 6-minute collapse, the Cathar had promised their people that Earth would fall in 6 minutes. Their generals believed it. Their soldiers believed it. Their entire race had trained a century to make it true. But 6 minutes was not a promise of victory. It became the measure of their destruction. Minute 1. The first blasts from orbit burned across the surface of Earth. Cities shook. Towers fell. The Cathar soldiers marched with thunder in their steps, confident in their strength. Civilians screamed. Government scrambled. The world trembled under alien fire. The Cathar thought this was the beginning of their triumph. They did not see the shadows forming in the smoke. Humans preparing to strike back. Minute 2 in New York. Anti-air missiles, built for human wars, locked onto alien carriers. They weren't supposed to work against such advanced technology. Yet one by one the missiles found their marks. Explosions filled the sky as 2 Cathar ships fell into the river. The humans below cheered, voices filled with rage and hope. For the first time, Cathar commanders hesitated. Minute 3 across Europe, tanks rolled onto streets. Their cannons shattered alien walkers. In Asia, hackers broke through alien signals, sending false commands to their armies. Soldiers turned against each other, confusion spreading like wildfire. In Africa, desert fighters lured alien troops into traps among the dunes. In South America, entire villages rose together, fighting as one. Every corner of Earth was alive with resistance. The Cathar realized their perfect formations were breaking. They had trained against order. They had never trained against chaos. Minute 4 communication among alien fleets began to fail. Static filled their channels, false orders spread, commanders shouted in panic. Human forces struck in coordinated attacks, hitting weak points the aliens didn't know they had. Bridges collapsed under alien machines. Ships were torn apart by missiles hidden in forests. And in the skies, pilots rammed their jets into alien craft, sacrificing themselves to bring the enemy down. The Cathar had prepared for enemies who valued survival. They were not prepared for enemies who valued victory more than life. Minute 5 panic spread through alien ranks. Reports of heavy casualties came from every front. Elite Cathar troops were ambushed in city streets. Entire divisions vanished in jungles where humans struck from every shadow. Their fleets above Earth were burning, hit by weapons they thought were too weak to matter. On the ground, Cathar soldiers looked into human eyes and saw something terrifying. Fury mixed with laughter, defiance mixed with madness. The humans were not afraid. They were alive in battle, as if this was the moment they were born for. Cathar soldiers trained for a century began to falter. Their weapons shook in their hands. For the first time, they felt what they had never felt before. Doubt. Minute 6. The war that was supposed to be a victory became a nightmare. Alien ships fell like burning meteors into oceans and forests. Armored walkers collapsed under waves of human attacks. Commanders screamed orders, but no one listened. The Cathar were no longer an army. They were prey surrounded by predators. On one flagship, a Cathar general stared at the planet below, his claws trembling. He had sworn to his people that Earth would fall in 6 minutes. Now in 6 minutes, he watched his dream die. His fleets were scattered, his soldiers broken, his pride crushed. On the ground, survivors of both sides looked up at the skies of fire. Humans, bleeding and battered, raised their voices. Some shouted, some sang, some laughed in victory. The Cathar, who had trained for 100 years, endured only 6 minutes before the collapse began. The silence after was louder than the war itself. The Cathar had believed that training and discipline would make them unstoppable. But humanity's hidden edge, chaos, defiance, sacrifice, turned their perfect war into dust. 6 minutes. That was all it took to shatter a century of preparation. And now the Cathar faced a truth they could not escape. They had awakened something far more dangerous than they had ever dreamed. The last survivor's memory, his name was Serkal, though on Earth no one would remember it. He was Cathar, born in the war camps, raised in drills and fire. From his first breath, he had been told a single truth. Humanity was prey and he was a hunter. For 100 years his people had trained for this war, and in only 6 minutes everything he believed was destroyed. The landing Serkal had stepped onto Earth with pride. The air was thick with smoke, the ground trembling under the march of armored walkers. His weapon burned bright in his hands and his heart beat with certainty. This was supposed to be the easy war. Humans would scream, humans would fall, humans would bow. He believed it. Every Cathar soldier believed it. When the first human rocket struck the sky and ripped apart a carrier ship, Serkal's pride wavered. When a squad of humans stormed his unit's flank with nothing but rifles and rage, his certainty cracked. But still he fought, still he killed, still he told himself that Cathar strength would crush them. The eyes of a human, it happened in a ruined city street. Smoke curled between broken towers and Serkal faced a lone human soldier. The man's helmet was gone, his face was bloodied. One arm hung uselessly at his side. Yet his eyes, those human eyes, did not show fear. They showed fire. Serkal raised his rifle. The human charged with nothing but a knife. No strategy, no plan, only raw defiance. Serkal shot him down, the blade falling inches from his chest. But before death, the human had smiled. A broken smile, filled with madness, filled with victory. That smile cut deeper than any blade. In that moment, Serkal understood something his training had never taught him. Humans did not fight to win battles. They fought to refuse defeat. The collapse minutes passed like hours. Orders screamed through comms. Soldiers shouted in panic. Explosions filled the sky as Cathar warships fell. Serkal's unit scattered, ambushed at every corner. He saw comrades torn apart by rockets, dragged into alleys by mobs, crushed under collapsing buildings. He tried to follow orders, but there were no orders left. Commanders shouted contradictions. Fleets called for retreat, then for attack, then for silence. The perfect Cathar army, shaped over a century, broke apart like glass under hammer. Serkal ran. Not out of cowardice, but out of instinct. The instinct his people had tried to burn away during training. He ran because survival was all that remained. Around him, humans fought like shadows, striking from rooftops, from sewers, from the ruins themselves. They were everywhere and nowhere. The memory that would not die hours later, though to him it still felt like those cursed 6 minutes, Serkal hid in the shell of a fallen transport. His armor was cracked, his weapon gone. His body shook, not from wounds but from something worse, fear. He thought of his people back home, cheering, waiting for news of victory. He thought of the songs sung in the war camps, the promises of easy conquest. He thought of the generals who had sworn Earth would fall. Lies, all of it. What remained in his mind was not the sound of plasma fire, not the screams of dying Cathar. What remained was that human smile. The broken man who had no reason to keep fighting, yet did. That was the memory that haunted Serkal. That was the moment he realized the truth. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was the predator his people had never trained for. The last survivor. When the retreat signal finally came, Serkal crawled from his hiding place and boarded a fleeing ship. He looked back one final time at the burning planet below. Earth was scarred, its cities shattered, its people bleeding. But it was not broken. It would never be broken. Among the thousands of Cathar who had landed, only a fraction returned to the sky. The invasion that should have lasted 6 minutes had ended in disaster. For Serkal, it was not just defeat, it was revelation. His people had prepared for a war of power. But this was a war of will, and humanity's will was endless. The final thought, as the ship carried him away, Serkal pressed his head against the cold steel wall. He closed his eyes, but the human's face returned again and again. The blood, the knife, the smile, a smile that said, "You cannot break us." For the rest of his life, Serkal would carry that memory. Not the battles, not the orders, not the screams, but the smile. And he knew, as all Cathar survivors knew, that Earth was no longer a target. It was a warning carved in fire and blood. The Cathar had trained for 100 years. They endured 6 minutes, and in those 6 minutes Serkal had seen the truth. Humanity was the nightmare of the stars. Humanity's message: the fires of invasion still burned, cities were scarred, oceans smoked where ships had fallen, the sky carried the black marks of battle. Humanity had bled, humanity had lost, but humanity still stood. The Cathar were gone. Their fleets were shattered, their armies broken, their dreams destroyed in 6 short minutes. Survivors limped back into the stars, carrying with them not trophies, not victory, but shame. A century of training had ended in failure. On Earth, silence followed the war. Streets were filled with rubble, hospitals with the wounded, and graves with the fallen. Yet in that silence there was no despair. There was something else, something stronger: defiance. The gathering world leaders met in hidden bunkers, broadcast stations, and underground command centers. For once in history, nations set aside their rivalries. The invasion had united them. They had survived the storm together, and now they spoke with one voice. Humanity would not wait for another enemy to come. Humanity would send a message. Technicians worked day and night to repair satellites, to rebuild communication networks, to reach beyond Earth. Soldiers stood guard, not against aliens but against fear itself. And ordinary people, teachers, workers, children, watched with quiet determination. They had faced extinction and endured. Now they wanted the galaxy to know. The broadcast, the moment came when the first signal tower crackled to life. Across the stars, a transmission spread. It carried past the wreckage of alien ships, past the void where Cathar fleets once flew, and into the endless dark of the galaxy. The screen showed Earth, not perfect Earth, but scarred Earth. Smoke rising from cities, craters in the land, broken towers scraping the sky. A wounded planet, but alive. Then came the voice. It was not one leader, not one soldier. It was many, men and women, young and old, speaking as one. This is Earth. We survived. The words were simple, but in them was a weight greater than any weapon. The warning, the message continued. You came to us with fire. You thought we would bow. You thought we were weak, but we are humanity. We do not bow. We do not break. We fight until nothing is left, and even then, we fight still. Images played, soldiers firing rockets into alien carriers, civilians dragging down armored soldiers with their bare hands, pilots ramming their jets into warships. Every image showed not weakness, but defiance. You trained for a century. You endured for 6 minutes. And now the stars will remember what you learned. Earth is not prey. Earth is not weak. Earth is a predator, waiting in the dark. The Cathar survivors, hiding in distant systems, heard those words. Other alien races listening from the edges of the galaxy heard them too. And fear spread, fear of the world that had turned an invasion into a massacre. The legacy of 6 minutes among the Cathar. Shame became legend. Stories spread of human soldiers who laughed while dying, of children who stood against machines, of cities that refused to kneel even as they burned. The 6 minutes of collapse haunted them more than 100 years of preparation. In the wider galaxy, whispers began. The humans cannot be conquered. The humans are chaos. The humans are the nightmare. And though Earth was scarred, Earth grew stronger. Nations rebuilt faster than ever, united by the war. Scientists studied alien technology left behind. Soldiers trained harder, not out of fear, but out of hunger. For the first time, humanity looked not inward, but outward, toward the stars. The final line. The broadcast ended with words that echoed into every corner of space. Come if you dare. But remember this. For 100 years you trained. For 6 minutes you endured. For eternity you will remember humanity. Then the screen went black. The galaxy remained silent. No fleet moved toward Earth. No army dared follow. The Cathar, once proud hunters, became the warning of what happens when arrogance meets humanity. And so, in the ashes of invasion, a new truth was born. Humanity was no longer just a world. Humanity was a message carved into the stars, a message that would never be forgotten.